Maximize the lifespan of your Kubota equipment with Kubota genuine parts. Manufactured to the highest standards, their parts are a perfect fit and offer unparalleled performance. Whether you're farming, landscaping, maybe you do heavy construction, maybe you just have stuff around the house, using genuine parts means you're investing in reliability. Keep your equipment working as hard as you do. Go with Kubota genuine parts. You can find a full line of Kubota genuine parts at any more than one of the 1,000 dealers nationwide. You can find a dealer in the My Kubota app or visit KubotaUSA.com. If you don't have the My Kubota app, you can find it in the Google Play or Apple app stores. You can click the links below in the video description on YouTube, or you can scan the QR code on your screen. The QR code is right about there. It's Tuesday, August 12th. I'm Justin Fiedler. This is sort of DIRTRACKR Daily presented by Kubota Genuine Parts. We hadn't planned on doing any shows this week. We've got a lot of things going on. I mentioned back on Saturday that we've got some grad school stuff going on, so we're kind of doing a little bit of an impromptu daily show. But the big news out of today, I'm sure you've already seen by now, Tony Stewart Racing releasing Donny Schatz from the 15 sprint car. Kerry Madsen is going to get in it for the rest of the season. That starts this weekend at Ogilvy. Madsen will miss the two Outlaw shows, October 22nd and I think 23rd. He's going to continue running at Knoxville weekly. There's, I think, one more race left in their season, so he's going to run that. TSR will find someone else to run those races, but then Madsen will be in it for the rest of the season. And if you might remember, Madsen was at TSR during the 2021 season. He ran 37 races, had 6 wins. You might remember that was kind of in the middle of all of the Ford development stuff. They had brought that second car out. Ricky Warner actually back then was kind of crew chiefing for Kerry Madsen during that season, but did pretty well before they ended up shutting that program down and putting the 14 car on the shelf. But Schatz is now a free agent. Looking around, he told Jeremy Elliott today he does not have a deal lined up for this weekend. I would imagine there will be lots of people calling him, wanting to put him in a car. So, you know, I think it's possible we could see him this weekend in a second car for somebody, or for maybe one of the Midwest teams. Someone said the Lundster car doesn't have a driver. We know Guy Forbrook, tested with Schatz not long ago. So there could potentially be some options out there for him. But some rumblings during the Knoxville weekend that things were going sideways with TSR. I had a message from somebody that maybe they were already talking to drivers. James McFadden's name came up as a potential replacement. I think McFadden could be an interesting guy for some free agent stuff this offseason if he's interested in coming back to the U.S. I don't know what his future will be with Tarleton, but his name has been mentioned in a lot of different places for some of these other deals. But Tony Stewart Racing, Donny Schatz, they've kind of become synonymous together, right? Almost 18 seasons together, 8 World of Outlaws titles. The release mentioned 234 wins, 9 Knoxville Nationals together. And this doesn't seem like it's ending particularly well. Schatz didn't seem like he had, was seeing this coming. And Tony Stewart told Jeremy Elliott today with Sprint Car Unlimited that this was his decision to part ways with Schatz at this point. Tony saying that they, want to get started with somebody else right away, start working towards the future and seeing if they can make the program better, and then getting, Donny an opportunity to go try to find something and figure out what his future is. But a bit of an unceremonious ending here. You would have thought there maybe would have been, some sort of farewell tour. Donny was going to retire with TSR, but things have just gone so sideways to this point that, now we've reached this, the situation where the two sides, it's just almost untenable for them to remain together. So, this is where we've gotten to. But the Knoxville Nationals didn't go super great, but Donny did find his way in on Friday night to that final transfer spot, did get into his 27th straight Knoxville Nationals feature, had a nice charge through the field, got a decent finish, but it kind of seems like it was a little bit of, too little, too late type of deal. And, Donny's still winless since Lincoln Speedway last October. We've all documented all of the things that have gone wrong for this team, all of the different changes, the Ford engine, the different crew chiefs, all of this stuff. And this year they have just not had it at all. The speed has not been there. They've run on the podium just a handful of times, but not able to find that win. So Madsen now gets in this car. Do we think that Madsen is the guy long term here? I kind of don't think so. I think this feels like a little bit of a stopgap. Madsen will get the team to the end of the season, hopefully get him a decent finish in the World of Outlaws Owners Championship, and then we'll kind of see where they go from there. I would imagine this will be a hot place that free agents are going to want to go. Obviously, we've talked about Gio Scelzi looking for a ride for the future, and with a ride like this of this caliber open, you'd have to think that a lot of drivers are going to be interested in this, are going to be calling Tony and his people wanting to know if they can get an opportunity in that car. So I do think it's a good sign though for the future. I know a lot of people, there's been lots of chatter about this car potentially shutting down, this team shutting down with all of the other things we've seen from Tony, but with them parting ways with this driver at this point, if they were just going to shut this thing down at the end of the season, they would have just finished out with Schatz, called it a day. I really don't see them making this move now, finishing the season with Madsen, then to just shut it down after that. That doesn't really feel like it makes a lot of sense. I mean, anything is possible. That could still happen, but I don't feel like that's going to be the case. I feel like they're going to go out, try to find another driver and move into this. And I saw this on social media today. Somebody mentioned that, that it feels like this is, it's always been Donny and TSR, but to be fair, TSR had plenty of success before Donny was in that team. There were a lot of other drivers that ran for them, Danny Lasowski and Paul McMahon. Lots of other drivers have driven for TSR through the years. So I know it feels like it's always been Donny and Tony together, but that hasn't always been the case. And it's kind of nice to see that, potentially this team is going to continue and that maybe there'll be kind of a bit of a rebirth here. I don't know that I believe, though, that the more changes aren't possible. Like, obviously, we still don't know what the actual situation is with the Ford engine. Does that come back at some point? Obviously, we've seen, Rudine Racing with Justin Peck continue with the Ford. Peck was in a Ford fire suit at Knoxville, so obviously they're continuing to do that. But Tony had some interesting comments that he said that Schatz didn't sign his contract for this year, and that he said if they didn't switch the motors away from Ford, that Donny would quit, which that kind of goes against the narrative that we've been hearing all along about how this was a supply chain issue, that that they had to switch away from Ford because there weren't enough parts, and maybe there's truth to that, but it's always seemed like there's other things going on here, and it's clear now that Schatz saying that if they didn't switch away from the Ford that he would quit. Like, clearly there were other things at play here. So where Donny goes for going forward, obviously we don't know. We'll see how that plays out. I have a very hard time believing that Donny's sprint car career is over. Does that mean a full-time World of Outlaws ride again? Obviously we don't know that at this point. I do think that's possible. Would this mean that Donny continues on a a pick and choose schedule sometime around around the Midwest? I think that's possible as well. We'll just see kind of what opportunities come his way. I know I've seen the Jason Myers thing mentioned. I've seen a second Ricky Warner car, like all of the kind of wild speculation that's out there. Like, we're just gonna have to wait and see what plays out over the next couple of days. And like I said, I could see Donny being at the racetrack this weekend. Maybe he won't. We'll just kind of have to wait and see what plays out there. But interesting stuff today. There's a ton of other things to talk about, to get into in the coming days. Obviously, I have thoughts about Ryan Timms winning the Knoxville Nationals. There's some late model stuff going on. We know Kevin Thomas Jr. in the Hybreeder car, that deal split. So a lot of stuff to come. I had planned on not doing any shows this week. With some of the things I've got going on. Our first show back will be Sunday. We'll probably have a lengthy show where we can go over all of this stuff, but I didn't want this situation to go by and not talk about this, because this feels really monumental to see Tony Stewart and Donny Schatz split after 18 years together. But again, I don't know that this feels very good. Schatz wasn't even quoted in the final press release. Jeremy was the first one to kind of get quotes from Donny about what the situation was. So you would have hoped that this would have ended a little bit better, that there would have been some grand send-off, and that everybody would have been friends at the end and nice. But definitely seems a little bit of a messy breakup here, and a shame to see that after all the success that these two have had together. But drop me a comment. Let me know what you guys think about all of this. We'll continue to follow this story and see how it plays out in the coming days, in the coming weeks. There's a lot more to come here, a lot of things to figure out. But appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll see you again here in a couple of days.